child's birth. And this is not just for males, females have this problem equally. Both men and women. We know because people come and talk to us about these problems. I thought I knew people's problems before I became a monk. Little did I know. I knew nothing. Today I realize how much people suffer because of raga, dvesha, moha. Raga, dvesha, moha is a curse. If you ever become a monk, you will begin to realize this. When people come and share their most intimate stories with you, stories that they have never shared with any friend or even a parent, how young children, having been abused at a young age, and the mark that it leaves on them, the black mark that it leaves in their memory, and then they just cannot get over it. Sometimes by a teacher, an uncle, an aunt, sometimes, and they just can't get over it after that. And then as a result of that, their self-value, their self-worth is diminished, gone. Now they just feel like they have to avenge society for what has been done to them. So to take revenge on society for what has been done to them, what do? They inflict the same treatment that was given to them. It's a vicious cycle. That's why only Buddhism has the answers to this. Everything else is a coping mechanism. You can't cope forever. You got to treat it with the problem. But these are all good coping mechanisms to put things into perspective, put things into context. So as I say, you will also have other techniques, coping mechanisms. What I have shared with you today, add them to your list of coping mechanisms and use them as you need it. Perhaps you're on your phone, wallpaper, your phone background, whatever, you can have it. Did you know that you're a doctor? This person who's talking to you, he's a patient. You're the doctor now. Are you ready to play the doctor's part? That could be your phone wallpaper. If you have to deal in a situation where a lot of angry people talk to you, sometimes maybe you work in customer services, right? Or perhaps you are a senior manager, and a lot of the time you get problems that come to you, and anger plays a big role in a big part in your role, and you really want to deal with this problem. Perhaps that could be what you can do. Or maybe if you have a calendar, desk calendar, on that you can print or write in small words, just a small line. This man who's come in front of you, he's angry. So he's a patient. He's just come looking for a doctor. Are you ready to be the doctor? Are you the doctor? See, simple. Just thinking about looking at that for a brief moment can put you into the right perspective. Take a moment, take a step back. Just until the lifeguards come and save you. And your lifeguards are your anicca dukkha anatta. Like you have the oxygen mask or the lifeboats. Just until the lifeguards come and save you, you need something to deal with the situation. Your first aid box. So this is your first aid. Just until you get medical attention. Your first aid box. These are your coping mechanisms, your painkillers. However you want to look at it. So have some first aid or rather coping mechanisms in your arsenal because you will need them. And it's nothing wrong to have. But understand though that I emphasize it again, one last time, that these are only coping mechanisms. This is not the silver bullet. It is not the perfect and final answer. It's simply buying yourselves time for you to be able to apply the principles of anicca dukkha anatta. And the application of anicca dukkha anatta is what we spoke about last week and I think the week before that, the 4-stepped approach. First, take the problem to yourself. Rather than pointing the finger out, point the finger back at you. Then ask yourself, is this to do with the 4 requisites? Is it to do with food, shelter, clothing or medicines? If it's not to do with any 4 of these things, then you have nothing to do with the world out there. It's solely your problem to solve. You don't need to go to anybody else. You have to be able to solve this problem by yourself. You can use a teacher, of course, but in this, the solution does not involve any other party. The problem is wholly with yourself. Right? Then we go into root cause analysis. You write this problem statement down and split it and find out which segment of this problem do I have to now find an answer to. Because in the problem there will be one part that talks about the world, and then there will be another part that talks about what you want. So having written the sentence down with the word want, now you start to find an answer to this. So to eradicate want, first you need to ask yourself, what is the problem with wanting? Every time you get this opportunity to do this, remind yourself of what are the pros and the cons. So last week and the week before last, as I was talking with you, you may know I do this sermon with my parents every Sunday, half an hour, 1 hour. So that these days I'm talking to them about attachment, and as I said, they're very they like their logic, right? So I have to apply through logic. If it makes sense logically, they will accept it. I can never win anything by asking them to believe in something. So they don't like that approach. So it has to be logical. So I have come thus far. They have accepted that attachment is the cause of suffering. So my next step is to ask them, so let's work on eradicating attachment. But before that, I said, before we start eradicating attachment, let's find out, are there any cons to eradicating attachment? Because what if in eradicating attachment, getting rid of attachment, you also get rid of something else that might be useful? So then because otherwise you have this reluctance. Okay, attachment is a cause of suffering, but I don't want to get rid of it just in case. I might also lose out on something else. And you'd be surprised when I asked them what might be the cons of getting rid of attachment, they had some answers to give. My mother said, well, when you get rid of attachment, you will lose you will not want to fulfill your duties and responsibilities after that, and your obligations, you will forget all that when you get rid of attachment. I said, what else? And she said, you will also begin to live a very lethargic life. You will not have any desire in the sense, you will not have any aims or any ambitions. You will, it'll just be like just be around until something happens to me. It's just that kind of life, which is just passing time. So I said, good, I'm thankful that you came up with these answers, because otherwise I can continue talking to them about how to eradicate attachment, but in the back of their minds, what will they be thinking? I don't want to get rid of it because there are cons to it. So you have to very, very scientifically, I've been taking this journey along with them, and I'm building up material to write my book, Buddhism for Skeptics. It's in the making. It'll come out after I've done my sermons with my parents. Buddhism for Skeptics. Because as a skeptic, they will not accept anything through faith. That's good, because you don't need to. I think a lot of people are stuck in this hurdle with Buddhism. They are reluctant to take on Buddhist principles because the way that Buddhism has been portrayed to them is what the Prince Siddhartha did when he was born, walking on the lotuses, and how everything was just so airy-fairy and so lovely and so beautiful, and how the white elephant came and carried the lotus, and this is what people believe Buddhism is about. So the moment you talk about that to someone who's a skeptic, they'll go, is this what Buddhism is about? I'm not interested. Of course they're not interested. No wonder. I wasn't interested. And then when you talk about it's about arahants flying in the air and going under the ground and going through water, then again people are not going to be interested. Because again, that's just stuff you're going to have to believe through faith. A skeptic will not buy that. And again, even if you talk about stopping rebirth, a skeptic will not buy that. Buddhism is about stopping rebirth. Not interested. That's I said, that's the last thing you should be saying to someone who's a non-Buddhist. Buddhism is about stopping rebirth, because people don't want to stop rebirth. Even if they believe that rebirth exists, people don't want to stop rebirth. What they want to do is to be born and live happily. That's what people want to do. So the moment you say Buddhism is about stopping rebirth, not interested. So when you talk to a skeptic, you got to put all that to a side, and you got to build a logical argument. So even when we talk about eradicating attachment, what are the pros and what are the cons? What are the side effects of removing attachment? What are the side effects of anicca, dukkha, anatta? You got to be able to prove to them that there are no side effects. This is a win-win situation. There are no losses. Nothing to lose and everything to gain. When you present a case like that, now you're sold. Checkmate. You can't move anywhere. You have to buy this. No arguments, no counter arguments can be put forward. I love the fact that Buddhist philosophy is so solid. So solid. You can't pick any holes in this. If you could, I would have picked them by now. That's how skeptic I used to be. I would have picked them by now. If there were holes to pick in this. This is so airtight. You can keep digging. You will only find the truth. The more you dig, the more the truth you will find. That's why we need to get our people to focus on that. Particularly our Western audiences. Right? People who don't come from the same backgrounds that you have. People who don't come from the same family backgrounds that you have. In your cases, most of your parents and grandparents, right, they will have had a good grounding in Buddhist principles and Buddhist philosophies. Even if you didn't know what the Mahasangha was, when you saw a Swamin Wahanse, your hands would naturally come together as a mark of reverence to them. But that is not the case with a lot of people in this world. To them, that's just, it's just people in a yellow robe. That's all it is to them. So we need to take a very logical and methodical approach. Using science, we can prove that Buddhism is the deal. Is the real deal. So we need to take this message out to our people, and you all have a part to play. I'll tell you what that part is when I start compiling the book. You'll all have a part to play. Perhaps you'll have testimonials that you can share. And in those testimonials, you'll be sharing what your stories are, where you came from, how you started this journey, and how the Dhamma has transformed your lives. I think that will be really powerful, to have your testimonials in there. All you got to do is just hang in there. Don't go until I've written the book. Okay, I'm planning on making a start this year. So just hang in there. Don't anyone go before I've taken your testimonial. Because we need to take the Buddha's message, folks, to everybody out there. And if your contribution is in writing a testimonial, here's how it changed my life, then that will do wonders. Because every soul that it touches, every person that reads that book, now they have a story to relate to. The background that you came from. How to you, Buddhism was simply another religion. And then you listen to the Dhamma, and then you began to realize, hey, this is not a religion. This is a science. It is the science of happiness. That's what Buddhism is, the science of happiness. Someone asks you, what is Buddhism? Science of happiness. I don't believe that. Well, it's a science. Believe it or not, it's the science. If you throw something up in the air, it's going to fall back down the ground. I don't believe that. Tough. Whether you believe it or not, that's just the way it is, because it's science. Buddhism is the science of the mind, and it's the science of happiness. So you'll all have a part to play in that book. You'll be sharing your testimonial, and that testimonial will be going out to everybody out there. People will be reading that book, hopefully, and they'll start to be able to find themselves in that book. Buddhism for Skeptics. I don't think there's a book that by that title as yet. Buddhism for Skeptics. Because problem is, Buddhism has always been portrayed through faith and beliefs. In there, we don't even need to talk about the Buddha. You don't need to talk about the Buddha. We may, but you don't need to talk about the Buddha. Because this is a science. Can you not talk about Newtonian physics without actually talking about Newton? It's Newtonian physics only because Newton discovered it. He didn't invent it, he discovered it. Can you not talk about gravity without talking about Newton? Of course, because it's a science. It just happened to be that Newton discovered it. Just happened to be. Anyone else could have done that. What the Buddha Gautama did was he discovered it. Had he not done that, somebody else would have followed, and he would have done that. Of course, the Buddhas are very special people. But if the Gautama Buddha didn't do it, the next Buddha would have done it. And if he doesn't do it, the next Buddha would have done it. There'll always be a Buddha that will come and discover the truth. Because the nature of the truth is that it will always surface. Why? Because the truth is not the cause of, it's not an effect that is conditioned. The truth is not conditioned. The truth is the truth. That's why when you say a lie, you got to say another 100 lies to cover it up, right? That's only if you say a lie. But if you tell the truth, how many things have you to say to cover it up? You don't need to, because it's the truth. The truth does not need to be maintained, but a lie has to be maintained. So if anything has to be maintained, the converse of that is, if anything has to be maintained, then it's a lie. If anything has to be maintained, it's a lie. If you are maintaining something, it's a lie. If it's a lie, you have to maintain it. If it's the truth, you don't need to maintain it. If you're not maintaining something, then it's the truth. That's why the Four Noble Truths, you don't need to maintain it. It is the truth. What happens is, from time to time, people lose sight of it. And then a Buddha comes along and rediscovers it. Does he invent it? No, because it's nothing to be invented. It's there. Why do you invent something that already exists? All you need to do is discover it and say, hey, did you not see that? Ah, there you go. That's what the Buddha does. So Buddhism for skeptics is coming soon. I don't know how soon that soon might be, but it's coming soon. And you will all have a part to play in that. So get ready with your testimonials. Start writing them. It will talk about your story. Remember, I always say, when you contemplate a Buddha Anusati, what we did last week, right? Think about how you transformed, how you changed from who you used to be to who you are today. I mean, that is your testimonial, that the Dhamma is true, that the Dhamma works. How can you be someone who gets angry all the time and then give a CD to someone and say, hey, I got some really good stuff, listen to this, when he or she knows that you're always angry? How can you sell a CD to someone like that? Why does a door-to-door salesman dress up quite smart? Because he wants to show that the product that he's selling has enabled him to become successful. In other words, the product, he believes in the product. So what if someone who hasn't shaven for 3 weeks tries to sell you a shaver? This shaver is really good. He hasn't shaved in 3 weeks. A guy who doesn't brush his teeth, he's trying to sell you a toothbrush. Would you buy it? No, the first thing you're going to say is, how come you haven't brushed? So likewise, if you don't demonstrate how the Dhamma has transformed you, then don't try to sell the Dhamma. Because remember, you're not selling the Dhamma. What are you selling? Or who are you selling? Yourself. You are selling yourself. People sell people. Based on that, you buy the product that they have to offer you. It's a really simple principle in sales. If you have been in sales in any period of time, you will know. People buy people. Just Google it, you'll find it. People buy people. So even in the Dhamma, people buy people. They'll buy you. Based on what you are, who you have become, people will be ready and willing to take what you have to offer, which is the Dhamma. So you have to be able to demonstrate that you have transformed as a result of the Dhamma. So coping mechanisms are all useful stuff for that. Okay, so to that list, add your own ones. Add your own ones. It's always good to know that there are people out there who have every being that you come across has once at some point been a mother, some point been a father. Another coping mechanism is one that I use. I always believe that a Rahatan Mahanse, who is my role model, is always by my side. So right now, he's next to me, even at this point in time. So this is not some supernatural something. This is my coping mechanism. I know that there's a Rahatan Mahanse right next to me. So for each of you, whoever you role model, either Rahatan Wahanse or Rahat Mehinin Wahanse, have that person right next to you all the time. When you walk, walk behind them. When you sit, sit next to them. When you eat, eat with them. When you sleep, go and sleep with. What I mean by that is, be aware that they're next to them, next to you. They're alongside you, they're beside you. Because then your conduct will always be one which will earn you praise and honor from the Arahatan Wahanse who's next to you. You will never be inclined to do something if you know that they are going to be dishonoring you, or they are going to shame you for your conduct. You will not do that. So before you say something, ask yourself, if I say this out loud, what would that Arahatan Wahanse think of me? If I go where I'm going to go, what would that Arahatan Wahanse think of me? Would he be willing to go where I'm going to go? Would he be willing to go where I'm going to go, where I want him to go? Now, let's say you are a married man and you have an extramarital affair with some lady. Now you have the Arahatan Wahanse next to you. You're getting all dressed up to go where? To go see this other partner. Would the Arahatan Wahanse come with you? Would he? No, then don't go. You're getting dressed up to go see your parents. Would the Arahatan Wahanse come with you? Of course. Then go. You're getting ready to go and take something that doesn't belong to you. Would the Arahatan Wahanse come with you? No. Then don't go. You need to be in the office by 9 o'clock. Your plan is to go at 9:30. Not because you're allowed to be there by 9:30, but because you think, half an hour, who cares? Who's with you? The Arahatan Wahanse. Would he approve? No. Then don't go at 9:30. Go at 8:30. Something I learned from one of my mentors. It just came to me, I'll share with you now. Always do a little bit more than you're expected to do. Always do a little bit more than what you're expected to do. Whether that is as a worker, as an employee, as a mother, as a father, as a husband, as a wife. There are, society will expect certain things of you, right? Society will expect a husband to behave in a certain way, a wife to behave in a certain way, the employee of a company to work in a certain way. So your job description will tell you what you're expected to do. Always do just a little bit more. There will be those of you who do lots more, but if you don't, then I always do at least a little bit more. There's a reason for that. Let's say, I'll share one of my personal experiences. I used to know a guy where I used to work at the bank. He was a good guy, but his working hours were 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock. Good guy. If he ever came into the office at 8:30 in the morning, so he's still got half an hour to go, and normally he would come a little bit early just so that he can be at his desk by 9 o'clock. Believe you me, he would sit in the lobby from 8:30 to 9 o'clock. He wouldn't come to the office until 9 o'clock. I don't know why, but that's just the way he was. And his work finishes at 5. So he works to the letter. His work finishes at 5. So we used to have this chat facility, so we can use to communicate with each other in the office. Sometimes you're in the middle of a conversation. So you ask the question and hit enter. Now it's 4:59, 55 seconds, 6, 7, 8, 9. If it ever hit 5 o'clock, you can be guaranteed it's going to go offline. Messenger goes offline. Not even simple as a goodbye. It would go offline. Because I need to be out of my seat by 5 o'clock. That's it. Shut down. Right or wrong, I don't know. That's just the way he was. So he'd be there by sharp 9 o'clock and he'd be out of his seat by sharp 5 o'clock. That's good, but it's not great. To go from good to great, always be willing to do just a little bit more than what you're expected to do. in any context. That's why I say this is not just in the workplace. As a husband, do just a little bit more at least than what your wife expects of you. As a wife, do a little bit more than what your husband expects of you. As children, do a little bit more than what your mother or father expects of you. Just a little bit more. That little bit more is a lot more. It means a lot. That cherry on the cake, you know when you make a cake and you put that little cherry, that glazed cherry on top of the cake, right? It's worth all of the cake and more. Because it's that cherry on top of the cake that makes the cake look magnificent. Take away the cherry, cake. Yeah, okay, cake. But add the cherry on top. British Airways, I remember watching a documentary. They, in their, for their passengers who fly first class, whenever they make their dishes, they take a lot of effort and put a lot of detail into how it looks. And sometimes just taking away one cherry can save themselves many millions of pounds. They did some research and I remember reading about it. But they won't do it because that cherry is very important. It's only a cherry, but it's very important. That glazed cherry doesn't taste all that great, but still, adding that extra little bit more, it's called gold plating. Putting that just a little bit more makes a whole of a difference. And I'll explain to you why that is. There's actually a principle behind this. It's not just because, there's principle behind this. The principle is this. I'll give you an example, right? Let's say you hire a mason to do some work. You hire a bricklayer to lay some bricks and build a wall for you. You ask the guy to work from a day's worth of work, so from 9 to 5 is a day's work for him. And let's say you pay him 1,000 rupees, okay, just for argument's sake, 1,000 rupees. So when you pay this guy 1,000 rupees and he comes into the office or he comes into this site, the construction site at 9 o'clock and he leaves at 5 o'clock. When he works, he's of course, this is labor, okay, and through labor and you paying money, this is a transaction that's happening, right? This is a transaction. So this transaction involves him giving you labor and you giving him money. So at the end of this day, now that transaction has been reconciled. If you pay him at the end of the day, the transaction has been reconciled. So it's not arrears, not in red. It's just, he's given you and you've given him back. So balance. The universe is balanced again. But you and I, we all know that in this long journey in samsara, we have always been indebted to others. This is why even before the beginning of a sermon, we invite those beings who we have come across in samsara to offer them an opportunity to listen to the Dhamma and rejoice in the merits. And by doing that, we are able to allow them the opportunity to, or rather we offer ourselves the opportunity to repay debts that we owe them. Now this bricklayer who's come to the construction site and he's working with me and I'm paying him money, obviously I've got transactions with him that we need to reconcile. Sansaric transactions. Sasara Ganudenu, that we need to reconcile. Right now he's laying bricks and I've paid him some money, transaction reconciled. However, there are lots of other transactions that are yet to be reconciled, sansaric transactions. If this bricklayer, instead of coming at 9 and leaving at 5, if he came in at 8:45, 15 minutes extra, it may be that I only pay him 1,000 rupees, but the impression that he gives me is that he really wants to do this. He's quite eager and he wants to give me his service. That is why he's coming 15 minutes before he need to be there. That 15 minutes to me is worth more than the entire day, or maybe an hour or two of his time he spent there laying bricks. That 15 minutes, the impression it has, the effect it has on me is immense. As a result of that, it brings me a lot of pleasure and joy. It brings me a lot of joy. When I have joy, when I sense joy in my heart, he's given me what? Not just the wall. He's given me happiness. He's given me happiness. Now what he's done is he's